Flagstaff famous. That's pretty special. All right. I have some poetry for you guys. Yay. All right. So I am local to Flagstaff, grew up here, and have been writing poetry for quite a while. I'm technically in the MFA program, but I haven't taken a class in a while. So we'll just skip past that. All right, so normally I write poems that look kind of like this, but I wrote this poem that looks kind of like this. So I'm going to read that for you. Okay, this is all of this. All of this will be over someday. Waking up to a dozen birds chirping wild at 5 a.m. Sunlight, lying with your head on a man's shoulder, lying with a dog's head on your lap. Starlight, night, lying in the dark, listening to the trains roll by, wondering if it's worth it to wake up again in the morning, wondering what Columbus is like this time of year, what Ann Arbor is like, what Ho Chi Minh City is like, wondering if the reasons you keep staying still matter. You'll get through this all. Someday it will be over. You don't know what will replace it, but you suspect nothing, just an endless darkness that you've neither the sensory mechanisms to perceive nor the consciousness to interpret. To call it a darkness or a void or an emptiness is inarticulate, inaccurate, disingenuous, but you have to call it something. Nothing is imperceptible. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. In this world, nothing really ends. You suspect there is no such thing as a soul. Once as a young girl, you lay in bed crying, ineffectual, powerless. You cried hard, heavy tears and thought the whole time how stupid it was. You, privileged child, sheltered, cared for, and you prayed to a God you weren't convinced of, asked for a way to help people. The next day, a letter came addressed to you. It was the Christian Children's Fund asking for your 80 cents a day to feed and clothe orphans in Somalia or Ethiopia or wherever it was popular to philanthropize that year. You decided God wasn't the person to ask about these matters in the future. Your mom became a Christian, and she asked you to Christmas service. You still wonder if she fears both her children will die with sin on their lips, if they'll burn. But you can't bring yourself to fear the hereafter, still working on today and tomorrow. Next week gets to be too much, and you have to start reminding yourself that all of this will be over someday. You'll get through it, and you'll escape into the cool darkness that neither feels cool nor looks dark. You won't have to carry those heavy tears anymore. You'll end like everything ends, like nothing ends. Thanks. I like to open on a really high note. Okay, this is a little bit happier, kind of. Okay, morning again. Morning again. Snow again piled up against the door frame and packed hard into ice beneath the fenders of her car. The smell of them together fills the room, all pooled in the low spots and the space between his blue shoes, one resting where he kicked it off on its side. Morning again, and their two faces turn toward one another again. Sleep in their eyes, they steal glances, smile, nestle themselves back into one another, pull the scent back up over their shoulders, tuck it under their chins, and sigh. Their hands touch. Their thighs touch. Her foot entangles itself between his calves. He breathes in her hair. Snow is piled against the door frame, against the siding, against the window panes, snow and expectations, snow and the day. For now, the window panes and the door frame are holding. Since it's snowy, we're going to stick with that theme. This is called Snow. Sometimes the snow comes down so hard and so wet for so long that something has to give. 3 buildings' roofs collapsed that year, a bookstore, a sandwich shop, and one that sold movies, games, CDs, and leather cuff bracelets for angsty teens. All 3 caved in during the dead of night, leaving trapped in the debris only books and videos and hard-earned paychecks that workers drove to collect that Friday morning, hoping to pay for their apartments and cars and dinners and lives. The roofs groaned under the weight and gave in, and that morning we could only stand outside, our palms pressed flat against the window panes, mouths agape, words on our lips like, oh, and huh, and I can't believe it. Hour after hour of our hard-earned lives had been spent behind those counters, serving, trading pre-teens cash for trinkets they did not yet know the value of, and books for other books well worn by those who knew exactly how much an hour alone with words was worth. We worked, kept our own roofs over our heads, and did not see this coming. We could not reverse time, lift snow and debris, knit split beams back together, and make whole what had already fallen in. Not even for long enough to climb up there in gloves and hats with scarves over our mouths to keep the biting air from drying our throats and arresting our breaths before we could take them, armed with shovels to clear away the weight. We could not take back the destruction we didn't stop. We would have to live without paychecks and books through the slow process of finding replacements. We would have to find a way to live around all this damage. Years later, in the rebuilt bookstore, I overheard someone working behind its new counter explain, well, the roof caved in. We kind of had to. Now in place of torn tar paper and insulation, shattered glass display cases, snow melting into the pages of paperbacks, I stand between orange-painted shelves and grasp a stack of dry poetry anthologies. Dozens earned paychecks putting this roof back so I could be in this place again, holding these words again, but they don't read as they used to, and this store smells too new. Thanks, guys. Who knows the poet Lee Young Lee? Yay, some people. Lee Young Lee is one of my favorites and actually one of the first poets I was introduced to in high school. I was assigned to write an homage poem, and I chose Lee Young Lee. So if you're familiar with his work, hopefully this sounds familiar. Eating Lee Young Lee's peaches. Like this, dusty orbs of yellow, pink, brown passed hand by hand from summer branch to basket, to bag, to hand, to mouth heavy with water, with history, with people who have held this weight and other weights we all carry. Beneath the skin of a peach, a song for a lover now lost. In each bite, the way her sweet lips wrapped around the imperfect, lumpy orb and sucked while her teeth sunk deep into flesh. Flesh gone, she touched up her lipstick in the vanity mirror and walked out his front door. Behind her, the center of a peach plucked from the garbage can and planted grew. Under the shade and fluttering leaves of his backyard peach tree, the man reaches up to pluck one ripe fruit. Watch its branches bend to him, bearing for him the weight of her absence. Watch him lift the dusty skin to his lips, to his wife from the window. It looks almost like a kiss. Thanks. This is my friend Janelle's favorite poem that I've ever written, and she's right over there. So look at her for a minute. She's very embarrassed. Okay. This is called Vermilion. In fact, my drink is called Vermilion. It's great. You should have one. Vermilion. Sunsets are named for absence, for loss. It is the only way they can be named. Fleeting bursts of orange and gold, pink and vermilion, radiant rays that reach over mountain summits, over treetops, over clock towers and canyon walls, and lovers embracing in the streets, looking something like promise, looking something like hope. It is the only way they can be named. Sit on a mountain peak and watch the sky and its clouds glow so brilliantly, so brightly. Watch 1,000 ripples catch fire and then turn cold and gray like every dying ember. Think, if you can, of anything but love and the way it always ends. The fire of one strong hand that grips your pelvic bone in passion, the sensation you still feel in its absence. Thank you. As Jesse mentioned, I work for a river rafting company. And my boss very generously, 2 years in a row, took us to Rocky Point. And we just hung out on the beach and swam in the ocean and drank a lot of beer. It was delightful. And I wrote this poem during and after that trip. It's called End of Season in Puerto Peñasco. 1. On the sides of the road south of Ajo, through the windows of our pickup, rolling toward the border, under a dark, clouded sky, the saguaros, limbs contorted into S curves or bent toward the ground, holding up the immense weight of their bodies, seem to reach for those cacti that are nearest them. 2. 8 a.m., Playa Encanta. I wake to calm, blue waters where yesterday there was surf, and drag paddleboard over white, shell-riddled sand to the ocean that's calling my name louder than the beach-facing chairs I'd planned a rendezvous with. 2 feet planted firmly on this buoyant surface, I reach oar into ocean, push against water, and move forward. 3. The rays are so numerous this year, we are now ocean shy. A fisherman in our group tells how he saw them glide in a school through the clear water. They maintain perfect distance, move together as though reading each other's minds, no, as though dancing. Their sandpapery gray skins approaching, but never touching the others, none among them ever getting stung. 4. Tequila, the fake service announcement explains, helps the socially awkward function more easily in settings where people come together. We heed its advice, supplanting it with cerveza and whiskey, rum and vodka. I try each in turn, wanting to reach for the man beside me who talks about making sushi for skiers in winter while we bury our feet in warm sand, wanting to be close enough to anyone to touch and not get stung. Take one handle in each hand and hold close to the lead rope. Use one hand to pull back and push forward with the other until your kite rises into the air. Dig your feet into the sand and hold fast when it threatens to pull away. Follow its movements in this dance with green fabric that catches the wind. Feel everything. When it pulls you, pull back. When it knocks you down, get up. Start again. Do not let this moment get away. This is a poem on the same theme, but it's much, much shorter. Cold Snap. Summer turns to fall in an instant around here. One cold snap, and all the tomatoes and green beans die on the line, and dandelions turn white fluff, scattering to the breeze. Lost. I feel every seed. I think I should have done more hiking while it was warm. I think I should have found someone by now, and I pull the sweater unearthed from the back of my closet around my shoulders. Outside, one stubborn seed clings to the head of something that's no longer a flower. And to you, if you are the warm body I cling to now, stay. Cling to me for a while. Ride out the cold. So I open with a somewhat downer poem, but I end on a much happier, more optimistic poem. So this is In Moments Between, and this is my last one for you guys. Today, the sidewalk is stained with dye from fall leaves brought down in last night's storm that have now blown into the street, yellow against the wet, black asphalt. Their impressions beneath my feet on the gray concrete remain. There are moments between moments when I don't think of what we had, when leaves after rain are just what they are, when mountains rise up through the cloud wisps gathered around their peaks like scarves, keeping their necks and shoulders warm, when children laugh and dogs grab hold of their own leashes, demanding to play, when a young man in a bar glows as the young woman he speaks to smiles 4 stools away until other men move between them. Praise these gaps between time when I watch life take place, when I do not make metaphors about the impressions of bright leaves on sidewalks or the scars on my toes that came from moments spent with you. Between moments, suns rise and set, seasons change, rains fall, winds blow. Between moments, I remember to want things that give me pleasure, like chocolate and sex, and the cold, sharp metal of guitar strings and wispy clumps of fur behind dog ears, and reading a poem, any poem. And reading a poem that burrows into the depths of me to meet something that had begun rising up there, shake its hand and say, "How do you do?" And the thing will say, "I think you know." And the poem and the thing will sit down beside each other on a park bench, and their shoulders will touch lightly as the snow falls down upon them. And pressing my back against sun-warmed rocks and napping and looking down from the tops of mountains. How fortunate that time and perception are such that we can always make more of it, breaking it into smaller and smaller units, sub-moments, micro-moments, micro-sub-moments, quantum fragments of nano-sub-moments that I can point to and say, in this sliver of time, there were mountains, and there was cold beer on tap, and there were friends making jokes that weren't filtered through the channels of public appropriateness, and there was spaghetti potluck with someone's grandmother's marinara recipe, and there was playing guitar in the apartment above Biff's Bagels until 5 a.m., and the neighbors coming in to join us, and there was dancing. Oh, was there dancing, and stars, and bright glowing sunsets, and rainstorms that brought down the leaves. In this sliver of time, I did not think of you, but of leaves, yellow against the black street only, of the impressions they left, of my mother's dark hair and the face I stole from her, and my brother's red backpack ducking through doorways in ruined stone temples in the jungle in Asia, where sweat mingles with moisture in the air and runs down faces and soaks hair, and a Busan temple with Buddhas and bodhisattvas carved into the rocks that I hiked behind once and looked out, shoulder to shoulder with my friend at the sea that surrounded us on 3 sides, and the apartment buildings growing up between the mountains, their off-white facades in the rolling green seeming to us a macro version of the shells built of the secretions of the sea creatures at our beaches, looked out and heard rising from the hills and the city and the sea. This is the world. See? Thank you. appreciate you guys so much for coming out and inviting me to read. Have a great night.